Do big primary wins for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton mean the nomination fight is over? Bringing together the world's best and brightest to discuss the future of science on the continent. And orchids bring joy and inspire artists in a new exhibit in Washington, D.C. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We'll begin here in the U.S. Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton, who are the big winners Tuesday in the latest round of U.S. presidential primary voting. Trump's victory in Florida ended the campaign of rival Marco Rubio, but Governor John Kasich kept his White House hopes alive with a win in his home state of Ohio. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone has a wrap-up of Tuesday's primary voting from Washington.
Thank you very much, everybody. This was an amazing evening. This was a great evening.
It was another big night of victories for Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, who won primaries in Florida, North Carolina, and Illinois.
I think we're going to have a great victory. And I think more importantly than anything else, we are going to start winning again. This country is going to start winning again. We don't win anymore.
The flamboyant billionaire's double-digit victory in Florida knocked Senator Marco Rubio out of the presidential race. But even as he suspended his campaign, Rubio issued a warning that seemed aimed at the Republican frontrunner.
America needs a vibrant conservative movement, but one that's built on principles and on ideas, not on fear, not on anger, not on preying on people's frustrations.
It was also a good night for Ohio Governor John Kasich. Kasich's victory in his home state primary saved his presidential campaign and keeps alive the possibility of a contested Republican convention in July.
We put one foot in front of the other, and I want to remind you again tonight that I will not take the low road to the highest office in the land.
The Republican race is now a three-man race, including Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who sees himself as Trump's chief rival.
And going forward, the choice is straightforward. Do you want a candidate who shares your values, or a candidate who has spent decades opposing your values?
In the Democratic race, big victories in Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio for frontrunner Hillary Clinton helped corral many more delegates than her rival, Senator Bernie Sanders. Addressing supporters in Florida, the former Secretary of State turned to her differences with Donald Trump.
If we reach out to treat each other with respect, kindness, and even love instead of bluster and bigotry, if we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down, there's nothing we can't accomplish together.
Sanders vowed to fight on.
This campaign is doing well because we are listening to the American people and not just wealthy campaign contributors.
But with Sanders falling further behind in convention delegates, Clinton took a major step towards securing the Democratic Party nomination. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
For more on the primaries, VOA's Caroline Presutti joins me live from Florida. Now, Caroline, was there anybody really who was surprised by the results, particularly from Florida?
It was a surprise to many voters here in Florida, and actually we're overlooking the Miami skyline right now. Miami-Dade County is the only county that Marco Rubio took last night in the primary, which to his supporters, I believe, was a surprise. You know, Marco Rubio ran with his senatorial bid in 2010 and took most of all counties in Florida. So the fact that he dropped out immediately after the initial polls were released came as a surprise to his supporters, maybe not to too many pundits, though, because if you looked at the polls, it was definitely more about Trump last night.
This was a big fight for everybody. What changes now? Do we expect to hear a change in the tone, or what things change going forward?
You you will see, or you will hear, a change in the tone, Vincent, especially between the two major candidates now. Hillary Clinton, as I understand it, is taking a break from campaigning. She'll come back strong, and she's expected to say that this is all about the general election now. So she'll ignore the other candidates and certainly concentrate on Donald Trump. Donald Trump expected to do the same thing to make it more a two-person race between he and Hillary. What you have, though, is the peripheral candidates, especially in the Republican Party now, calling for a contested convention. And that's where the big question is, what happens in Cleveland in July at the Republican National Convention?
And you know, many people are also looking at Mr. Trump as being in a very unique position in that he's actually going up not only against his opponents, but also against the Republican establishment. Have we seen that in the last few years, really?
That is an amazing point that you bring up. Absolutely. And what's also astonishing is a CNN poll that was just taken. It shows that the two main candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, are voted unfavorably by most voters. Hillary came out with a 55% unfavorable rating. Trump came out with a 60% unfavorable rating. So you have two main candidates in this country who people don't trust, they don't like. So what does that mean for our political system? It'll all sort itself out before November, but it certainly is a very interesting campaign year.
And we know a contested convention, it might be a very complicated concept for many to understand, but for the sake of our viewers, can you just briefly break it down, what that might mean for the Republicans?
Absolutely. A contested convention means that one nominee didn't achieve all the votes, that all the delegates, rather, that he or she needed to receive to get a clear nomination. Now, it appears that Hillary Clinton will be on the path for that. Mathematically, it appears that she will receive the nomination over Bernie Sanders. However, on the Republican side, not so clear. Trump needs 1,287 delegates in order to receive the nomination. And so far, I'm looking for my numbers here, he has received 646 of the 1,237 delegates he needs. Now, with John Kasich winning in Ohio last night, it's his first state that he's won. That's a big state. That gives him a bit of momentum to go forward. John Kasich, being the more serious campaigner, if you will, he was straightforward with issues. But in this day and age, it took him a while to get popular in this country. Why is that? It seems as if you have to have a different message for that voters are looking for. They don't appreciate status quo. They don't appreciate the establishment, and they're looking for someone different. That could be in Trump. They certainly are showing that they want to vote for Trump. But with Kasich winning Ohio, he's expected to come out. A contested convention would mean several ballots before the delegates finally vote on a nominee. So you go through one ballot and see how many delegates that the candidates receive. If they receive enough delegates, then they become the nominee. If not, it goes to a second ballot. It could go to many, many ballots before we come up with a nominee.
Wow.
But overall, if you look at this from the larger picture, it definitely means changes within the Republican Party.
Indeed, a lot of exciting days ahead. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Now, that is VOA's Caroline Prisuta reporting live from Florida. Well, in Nigeria, 22 people were killed on Wednesday when two female suicide bombers blew themselves up at a mosque outside the northeastern city of Maiduguri. That is the heart of a 7-year insurgency by Islamist Boko Haram militants. Military sources said the attack, which also wounded 18 people, occurred during morning prayers in the village of Umarari, 6 kilometers from the center of the capital, Borno State. It was the first such assault in the northeast since early February, when two suicide bombers, also women, blew themselves up at a camp for internally displaced people in Dikwa, 85 kilometers from Maiduguri. Now, there was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, but it resembled others by Boko Haram in its campaign to carve out an Islamic State in that region. Well, the U.S. State Department says Secretary of State John Kerry is studying the legal definition of genocide and should have a decision soon on whether Islamic State atrocities in Iraq and Syria fit that definition. A U.S. genocide designation against the terrorist group could set the stage for additional U.S. or international action against the group. VOA State Department correspondent Pam Dawkins has the story.
The Obama administration may be feeling additional pressure to respond to the mass murders, beheadings, rapes, and other crimes committed by Islamic State militants in the wake of a House vote overwhelmingly in favor of calling those atrocities genocide.
Not only is there a grave injustice happening in the Middle East to the people, to the Christians, Yazidis, and other religious minorities who have every much a right to be in their ancient homeland as anyone else, but this is a threat against civilization itself.
It's an issue lawmakers raised with Kerry ahead of the House vote.
As the Secretary has made clear in testimony himself, the Department of State continues to collect and evaluate all available information regarding these atrocities.
Analysts say the State Department could respond to Islamic State atrocities without the genocide label by deciding there is enough evidence to investigate what the group has done and eventually bringing charges against it.
But if they do that, then the United States would only be required in a legal sense to prosecute members of ISIS who happen to come to the United States.
Gregory Stanton says other options include referring the case to the UN Security Council or working with allies for an international criminal court investigation. Analysts say the genocide designation carries weight.
It highlights to not only our political leaders, but also to the people in the United States, that this is the crime of crimes that they're committing. This is the worst. You can't get worse than genocide. This is the Holocaust.
It also would be the first State Department designation of genocide since Secretary of State Colin Powell did so in 2004 in response to crimes in Sudan's Darfur region. Pam Dawkins, VOA News, the State Department.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Or coming up, could the next Einstein be an African scientist? Stay with us.
News and notes. This is Living Better.
Autism spectrum disorder is seen across the globe. It's 5 times more common in boys, and the diagnosis is usually made at about age 4. Genevieve Zapula realized there was something different about her son Henry early on.
He just didn't have that same level of interaction.
Researchers from Australia's La Trobe University in Melbourne have created an app to help parents who suspect their child may have autism.
We know that early intervention can actually improve children's developmental outcomes.
Dr. Josephine Barbaro says that the autism app called AS Detect takes parents through a series of steps to help identify whether their child as young as 12 months may have autism. Genevieve Zapula's son Henry was diagnosed with autism at age 2.
By the time he goes to school, that he will be at that stage where he won't be having those issues with settling and social interaction.
I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Welcome back. It's time now for a business report. The crude oil market remains unstable, but China indicated that it wants more oil from Nigeria. For more on these latest developments, Africa 54's business correspondent Jill Malandrino joins us live from our New York bureau. Hi, Jill.
Hi, good morning. This is an interesting twist, Vincent, in light of low oil prices and with even more supply coming into the market out of Iran, which will certainly add more strain to the system. In an interview with the Nigerian news agency, the economic and commercial counselor of the Chinese embassy in Nigeria said that China would want more crude oil from Nigeria. The total amount of export to China was 1 billion barrels in 2015, which was just 1.3% of Nigeria's annual export.
Now, how important are Nigerian exports to China?
The counselor said trade volume between both countries stood at nearly $15 billion, making Nigeria the third largest trading partner of China in Africa. The counselor explains that China is the largest developing country in the world and Nigeria is the largest developing nation in Africa. So both countries have complementary advantages in natural and human resources, funds, and markets.
And for sure, this must be very good news for Nigeria, a country that is oil dependent, right?
Oh, without a doubt, Vincent, this is positive for Nigeria. The economy has been rocked by the plunge in oil prices since 80% of the balance sheet is derived from oil revenue. So this will provide some relief, but more importantly, the growth of relations between both nations is key for Nigeria as it also exports machinery, transportation equipment, textiles, home appliances, medicine, and computers to China.
Well, Jill, thank you very much. That's Africa 54's business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Well, India and Africa have enjoyed a relationship that stretches way back to the pre-colonial days. Now, speaking to VOA, Arun K. Singh, India's ambassador to the United States, said the relationship between his country and sub-Saharan Africa is only growing stronger.
There are similarities in our situation. We are all broadly developing countries, and we can benefit from each other's experience. And based on our experience and our strengths, we certainly want to be partners with Africa. And the India-Africa Forum Summit that you referred to was the third in its series. And through that mechanism, we've sought to share our experience. We've also tried to see how we can contribute to the trade and economic partnership. So far, we have contributed almost $7 billion worth of concessional assistance, and we've made additional announcements for about $10 billion going ahead. We have contributed more than $1 billion of grant assistance, and we have provided more than 25,000 scholarships for students from Africa. We are working on the Pan-Africa e-network. We are seeing how all this can work towards a virtual university, Pan-Africa Virtual University. So there are different dimensions in which we are working together. And I think one has to realize that going ahead, a significant part of the world's population will be in Africa and Asia. And
well, Ambassador Arun K. Singh spoke with Carol Castiel, host of VOA's press conference, USA. Now, the leaders of science are looking to Africa for the next Albert Einstein. They recently converged in Dakar, Senegal. Africa 54's Mel Bailey tells us more.
The next Einstein Forum, held in Dakar, Senegal, brought together the world's best and brightest scientists and policymakers to discuss the future of science on the continent. 15 laureates, Africa's youngest and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, were chosen to present their research during the forum. Organizers are hopeful that this is just the beginning of scientific advancement and collaboration on the continent.
We want people to look at Africa and to work with Africa as a contributor to the global world of science. Specifically, we want to do that through our events, the next Einstein Forum Global Gatherings, which are meetings that bring together some of the leading thinkers from Africa and the rest of the world, with a focus on young people and a focus on women in the presence of policymakers and knowledge-based enterprise, to be that place where the leading thinkers can meet and actually do things together. We want to work on policy, and we want to build a scientific community in Africa on the global stage.
The forum kicked off on International Women's Day, at which time members of the professional sciences made it clear that within STEM development, gender equality is a goal that everyone should be after.
There's been much talk about it this morning. Engaging and empowering women in all fields of scientific endeavor, not only research, but entrepreneurship, training, and as well as trailblazing research and innovation. Those lead to applications and commercialization through the creation of eventually successful companies.
Of the 15 laureates chosen, 6 of them were women. One woman scientist among them spoke about her journey in becoming one of Africa's elite scientists under 40 years old.
I did not have any kind of
dissuasion from pursuing a scientific field because I was a woman. I think it just didn't even come up. But I am aware, I know that we live in a society and a culture where it's still often the case where girl children and young women are dissuaded from pursuing those fields based on preconceived notions of what a scientist is. And I think that's another key role that the next Einstein Forum can play in showcasing what the face of scientists in Africa is. Yeah.
The next Einstein Forum is scheduled for 2018 in Rwanda. But until then, established and aspiring scientists alike are encouraged to use the tools and connections discussed in these forums to inspire future generations to come. This is Mel Bailey for Africa 54, Dakar, Senegal.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Science and beauty merge in the nation's capital. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. Niger's appeals court rejects opposition demand to release jailed presidential candidate Ama Amadou before a runoff vote on March 20th. In Ivory Coast, Benin President Thomas Yaïbouni and his Togolese counterpart Faure Gnassingbé visit the country following a terror attack that left 18 people dead. Kenya taps geothermal heat in the Great Rift Valley to boost electricity production, with a goal to triple output by 2020. In the DRC, park rangers get help from bloodhounds to track poachers and kidnappers inside the Virunga National Park. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Everything is going digital at CeBIT, Germany's digital industry trade show. IBM's Pepper Robert charmed visitors at the show with a friendly greeting. But while the talkative and empathetic droid boasts ample digital tech, organizers here say the main trend is digitalization in all walks of life. The event's Drone Masters Summit shows visitors the various business applications for the high-flying technology. As well as a conference and exhibition, the summit also features an air show. Even vineyards are going digital. Sensor platforms record temperatures, air and soil humidity levels, sunlight and light intensity. Extra sensors can also be installed to measure leaf wetness, soil pH values, and nutrient levels. In other high-tech news, watch out, lazy dogs are not content with simply bugging humans about getting active. PetBat wants to get man's best friend moving again. They are selling an activity monitor for dogs for around $56, giving owners an insight into what goes on when they are away. It connects to a smartphone app which sets exercise goals based on dogs' breed, age, and weight. Meanwhile, TomTom is tapping into the lucrative golfing market, releasing a new version of its golfing sports watch, which can detect when you take a swing. Now, the watch gives players access to information about more than 40,000 golf courses around the world. It tracks hazards, distances to the green, and offers post-game analysis. The Golfer 2 will retail at around $283. Well, and finally, the power and the fury of the Game of Thrones was unleashed in New York City Tuesday night to celebrate the release of the Game of Thrones. The complete 5th season, a DVD Blu-ray animated dragons were projected onto buildings around Herald Square. That was the site of a free outdoor screening of Dance of Dragons, an animated feature, one of the bonus features included in the DVD package that was also released Tuesday. Game of Thrones 6th season premieres on HBO Sunday, April the 24th. And that is what is trending today. In 2015, orchids surpassed roses as the most popular ornamental flowers in the U.S. Now, a new exhibit at the U.S. Botanic Gardens in Washington is celebrating the colorful flowers with a collection of 5,000 orchids from practically all corners of the world. VOA reporter Julie Tabor spoke with the Gardens spokesman who, in his own words, explained why the exhibit is drawing such big crowds.
We're standing right now in Orchids in Focus. It's our big orchid show that we do every year in collaboration with Smithsonian Gardens. So for about 2 months, you're going to be able to walk through the conservatory and see thousands of orchids in bloom, from very big and showy, like we have here with these purple, to very small and minute. As part of the Orchids in Focus theme, we're celebrating photography through the years, and we have a few different photography exhibits in the exhibit space, like this one here, which focuses on pollinators and orchids. It takes a little different aspect of orchids, whereas normally you're really focused just on the flower. And then we also have really good photo opportunities presented this year for people to stand and take their own photos. Orchids are really cool because they exist on every continent except for Antarctica. And so you've got a really wide disperse of different types of orchids. They're also the biggest plant family that exists in the world. Orchids are really important in the United States. You can buy them really frequently and easily now. The fact that you couldn't really buy them so easily a few decades ago, it kind of helps you understand how they've now become the #1 economic ornamental plant in the U.S., surpassing roses.
I'm here because the orchid exhibit is going on, and it's so spectacular to see the colors and shapes and varieties and sizes, and it's a highlight of the spring season.
The orchids were just like, they're so colorful and really nice to look at, so of all the exhibits in the building, it was like this one seemed really nice to draw. So sitting right next to the plant and drawing it, it's been a good day.
Orchids obviously have a long history of aesthetic beauty. People love the way they look, but it's a lot more than that even. So we really celebrate these unique plants as part of this show, and we hope it's a way that people can really just engage with plants and appreciate the beauty and importance of plants in another way.
Good night.
Welcome to Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
When the George W. Bush Presidential Library opened in Texas, all of the living U.S. presidents, past and present, gathered for the ceremony.
One of the things that the Presidential Library's opening demonstrates, in many ways, is an end to the administration. This is really the last thing that he's going to do as president of this administration, of this group of people.
The word presidential means having to do with a president. Presidential libraries hold the official papers from a president's administration.
Presidential elections are when voters choose a president, often a nation's top public official. Now, when you hear the word presidential,
your English will be good enough to know what this news word means.